So, as always, we begin by acknowledging the original stewards of the various lands that we are on. We also acknowledge our ancestors. We acknowledge all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We acknowledge all the elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. So, if you can please do us the honors by introducing yourself to our listeners and viewers and tell us about your amazing work.
Well, thank you. My name is Vanessa Paesani. I'm serving as the Executive Director of the Pond-Deshpande Centre, which is at the University of New Brunswick. I'm calling in today from the ancestral lands of the Mi'kmaq, and UNB sits on Passamaquoddy and Wabanaki lands. Um, our work at the Pond-Deshpande Centre over the last, just over a decade has really been focused on um, supporting and stewarding social innovation and social entrepreneurship. So the original, I suppose, gift that began the center was from two entrepreneurs, Deshpande, um, who was originally from India, studied at UNB, went to Queens and then the US. And so he set up a network of Deshpande foundations, all focused on um, innovation. And actually, I read an article where he was interviewed yesterday where he was talking about, the fact that there's a certain portion of the world that has disposable income and another portion that doesn't. And so he's really thinking a lot about how do we apply um, different tools for these different types of people and entrepreneurship, social innovation, empowerment, and how do we really embody both of those things for based on what people need. And then Jerry Pond, who has been a really important entrepreneur in Atlantic, Canada. And so they came together to start this. And honestly, I think with the disruption and the poly crisis that we're in right now, the work of social innovation and social entrepreneurship really becomes more important than ever.
Absolutely. We see the crisis that's happening. So pulling out that inner creativity is so important so that it can really help. So we thank you for your service. So if I ask, like, what inspired you to get into this line of work?
For me, my first degree is in biology. I was very interested in ecosystems. And, one of the things that I remember when I was studying ecosystem biology is really like, gosh, there's just so many factors that we don't understand. And so, how do we make decisions that are like in the big picture? And so I think I became interested in that idea. Um, I'm interested in economic development as well. And so I think from I'm interested in the economy from like a systems level perspective as well. And I know that you folks are thinking of that too. And so it's, how do we um shift the economy being a very important system that we're all operating in. And then, what are all of these other systems that are, at play that we all interact with, whether it's healthcare the healthcare system itself, but then, our own system of well-being, the environment, which I'm really passionate about, um, and really other types of social inclusion, which I know you focus on as well. And so then how do we actually make meaningful change? And so part of that I think is understanding history, part of it's understanding the system, part of it's understanding the lived experience of people who are experiencing the issues with the system. And then how do we really move some of this change forward so that we can create a better world. And I do posit, I do believe that um, despite the fact that we're having significant challenges globally in probably every domain, I do think that things becoming better. It's just that right now we're in a dip, and then I'm hopeful that, we're making it better over the long term.
Yes, I agree. I agree. That's something that we have to be hopeful for. And, you know, this 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 earth realm that we live in is so diverse with different things going on at the same time. But at the same time, it can be very much the same, very relative from place to place. So, if I was to ask you, what are some of the challenges or barriers that you face in your work, and how have you overcome them or in the process of overcoming them?
Well, I think in terms of systems change, whether we're thinking about economic systems change or climate or policy, well, whatever it is, like, um, I think one of the challenges is that everybody wants to do good things and they want to create um, better outcomes. And so everybody's working on their piece of that. And then how do we truly create these mechanisms for collaboration, for doing things differently, for hearing each other in different ways? Um, for me, that's why I've been drawn to the discipline of executive coaching, is in some ways it is this practice of trying to understand what's happening in the field and the system so that you're able to help like transform what's happening. Um, because I do think there is agreement that things need to be done differently, but then it's like, how do we do that? And I think one of the curiosities I'm having in this moment, as well as probably others, is, you know, in light of the restructuring world economy, in light of climate change accelerating, in light of the significant influence of artificial intelligence, like what is going to change? And obviously, like none of us really know, but then how do we both um let's say at a nation level defend the nation while also trying to improve and do things differently collectively. And I think that that's a challenge, and one that is, that's happening in the macro environment, but then how do we figure out how to do that at a smaller scale, whether that's within New Brunswick, within the institution, within our communities. These challenges exist at all of these scales.
For sure, very multi-level. So, okay, so tell me, what do you have anything new or anything that you want to amplify for us at this time?
Yeah, right now we're working to support SMEs or small and medium-sized enterprise in New Brunswick in decarbonizing. Um, we've been working with an economist as an advisor, and we've done polling to SMEs. And so generally what we're hearing is, SMEs right now have a lot of pressure. They don't have a lot of time because of, all these economic unknowns and political unknowns. And so the question that's guiding us right now is how do we support SMEs to decarbonize in light of rapidly shifting political environments? And so we're launching a number of prototypes this fall. Some of them are focused on export support. Some are helping businesses comply with Bill C-59, the greenwashing bill. Um, some are focused on helping SMEs sell into multinational supply chains, especially if they have scope emission requirements. And so yeah, if anyone is doing this work, supporting SMEs and decarbonizing, and have any insights that they'd like to discuss, and definitely open for conversation. But otherwise, if anyone is operating an SME in New Brunswick or a decision maker, and they'd like to get in touch, we invite them to. And of course, invite you to follow our channel where we'll be telling some of these awesome stories over the next 8 months.
Awesome. So make sure we get your the details at the end so people can follow. That's great. So, if I was to ask you, like, how do you see? I know we were talking about this earlier too, as far as our, our hopefulness and just being having that kind of positive forward thinking. But how do you see the future of like, social innovation, in the future? How do you feel it's going to pan out?
It's an interesting question. I've been following the social finance and social economy movement across the country. I think there is some interesting trends. The standardization of impact measurement is one that I've been following and I'm very interested in. Um, we often, I think something that we take for granted is that money as a mechanism of trade is standardized through the profession of accounting, and we don't have a similar system, let's call it, for impact. And so it's hard to trade and measure and really like make robust decisions about impact. So I think like I've been following that globally. I think Canada is positioning ourselves well in that. Um, Social finance is an interesting one too. I think there's lots of different types of tools and ways that we're thinking about that, and public-private partnerships being one that's a current priority nationally. So I think that I'm following that and really looking towards the change that will mobilize. And then in terms of social innovation, really for me, it's the approach. It's like how do we understand the system? How we bring the right people to have conversations together to surface maybe some of the things that are different, um, are difficult to talk about. And so how do we have those conversations together? How do we make different decisions? And then how do we understand collectively the vision that we're moving towards? And I think that that's something that we probably need to work on, because right now the way that we seem to talk in the public discourse is still quite polarized, and so I think the more that we can find our common ground again, the easier it'll be to create this meaningful systems change.
I agree. I agree. I always say I'm hopeful because of the new generation, the Gen Z and beyond, because they want to know the who, what, when, where, and why. They holding us accountable to a lot of things. So, they're asking the questions like, what baggage are you leaving us with? So it's good when we're in this sector that we can create a platform to, ease a little bit of the disparities that they have to endure, coming. But I think once we get more into our own power and know that humanity and community has power, we just have to realize that we have power, because there are overseers that will kind of lull us to sleep if we don't activate. That's how I feel. It's within us to activate, to say enough is enough. We need change for our children. But the more they put that sleep powder on us, it gets a little harder. But we'll push through. We'll push through. That's
Yeah, I
great.
agree with you.
Hmm.
I think that
Hmm.
it is really that, yeah, our internal power, and how do we collectively step into that? Because a lot of our systems are structured to take that away. And
Yeah,
it is not easy, right? Like it's not
that's it.
easy to do that, but I do agree that it's one of the most important things that we can be working on.
That's it. That's it. Because there's plans in place already for us, 2030. Yes, there are SDG goals, but there are other things too that people have to be mindful of. Don't You won't own
Hmm.
anything and you'll be happy. These statements are being stated by overseers, and we have to really analyze those things and say, okay, where do we fit in society when claims are being made that we're not going to own anything, but we're going to be happy, you know? So, you know, who's making that decision that me and you are going to be happy based off of an overseer's decision? Like, you know, we have to really analyze. But anyway, that's a whole nother story. I can go on for days for that one. Oh, this has been really good, Vanessa. I really appreciate your sincerity, your passion that you have in this sector. So, if I was to ask you, what does success look like to you? What would you say?
At the PDC, success for us is making meaningful change in the areas of producing a more just economy, healthy communities, and workforce and civic innovation. And so, it's for us, it's in the short term, convening people, making meaningful change, and really just holding holding this potential of like what we're working on, what we're moving towards, and understanding that change takes time and that's okay. Um, but that if we're all working together and truly finding new ways to collaborate, that um, big change is possible. I like the quote that it's something like we overestimate what we can do in a month, but underestimate what we can do in 10 years. And so I think that like that's of course true for an individual, but it's true also for an organization or a province or a community. And so I think for us, what we're turning our attention to is, what are we moving towards in the next 10 years? And then how can we continue to make meaningful progress towards that?
Awesome. That's great. Yeah, there's an African proverb too, you know, if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, you go together. So
Yeah,
that's it right there. So Vanessa,
a
we
great
thank you
one.
so much. Yeah. We thank you so much for this interview. It's been very impactful. We thank you. And our last question for you is just leave your closing thoughts and calls to action and any details you want to leave for us. We appreciate.
Yeah, well, we are hosting a Open Data and GovMaker Summit in Fredericton, New Brunswick. If anyone's interested in talking about basically like how do we use open data to deliver public value in Fredericton on November 24th to 26th, and we invite people to attend. And then otherwise, like I said, if anyone's interested in our Green Horizons decarbonizing SMEs, I would love to chat. And we'll be hosting a series of showcases on past projects over the next few months. So I invite people to join our newsletter where they can learn more.
Fabulous. Well, Vanessa, on behalf of SETSI, I want to thank you so much for your leadership today. And we will close the way that we began by acknowledging the original stewards of the various lands that we are on. We also acknowledge our ancestors. We acknowledge all those who toil without compassion or compensation. We acknowledge all the elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. So once again, thank you so much. And I'm sure it's not goodbye. We'll definitely be collabing in the future. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for your time.
You're welcome. Have a wonderful day.